Who asked for this, some may say? I actually did. I mean, it was over 10 years ago, but I definitely muttered the words. The 3DS version is great, with all its little additions and 8 exclusive levels, but being taken down from 60 FPS to 30 FPS means there is no true definitive edition. And now we have that exact package. DKC returns with no waggle like on 3DS, although you can still enable it if you want to, or the 3DS editions like an easier difficulty, and what I bought it for, the new levels. And the Wii benefits like way easier co-op and much smoother gameplay at 60 FPS. So, we can finally say that there is no true definitive edition. Where? What's here is okay. Not passable in many areas and extremely safe everywhere. If you consider it a remaster of the Wii game, then cool, you get some new stuff. But if you consider it a remaster of the 3DS game, then you're getting almost nothing new, and I'm using the loosest definition of almost. That DK sprite in the background holds a Joy-Con now, and DK pulls out a switch in the idle animation. Otherwise, nothing new. Other remasters like Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition drastically altered the visuals, had a brand new soundtrack and quality of life improvements, and a totally new campaign. This does next to nothing. And Retro Studios' other remaster, Metroid Prime, was phenomenal. The graphics were redone from the ground up and are some of the best on the entire system, and they added dual stick controls for the first time. This is a definitive edition, and it was $40. This is $60, and it isn't even done by Retro Studios. But there is value with this being on Switch. It means the whole DKC series is on one platform, and with Switch 2, that complete DK library is being brought along. Though we still need 64. And 94, that's really what we need. I'm glad this exists, and I had a great time playing through it again, but allow me to introduce you to this chart I just made. Have you played Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze? No? Please play that one. Yes? Play it again. And then maybe another time. And then pick up Returns. Tropical Freeze is simply one of the greatest games ever made, and is more ambitious than Returns in literally every way, but holy moly 2 cakes! Back when this released on Wii, it was so fresh. Mario had already brought 2D platformers back to console, but DK was putting the mileage in. It's a side-scroller, but everything feels 3D. You've got different layers you can hop back and forth between. Levels frequently use the foreground and the background for gameplay potential, and it's all rooted in contextual platforming. Nothing just floats in DKC Returns. Other than the bananas, platforms are properly stitched into the environment, and it's so impressive when they crumble apart in real time. Nothing feels static, and achieving this on the Wii at 60 FPS was stunning. There is a slightly vanilla feeling to some levels, like, oh, here's the grassy world, here's the beach world, here's the lava world. Something games like DKC 2 and Tropical Freeze are very good at avoiding. But then you get levels where you take cover from murderous waves, or escape a pirate ship shooting at you from the background, or swing on these massive vines. It's definitely not as daring as it could be, but that creative spark still rears its head a ton, and the silhouette levels inspired just about every other side-scroller that would follow in the years after Returns. Even Mario got inspired by it. Minecarts are more dynamic than Rare's games with a much more lenient camera, and sometimes there's set pieces where DK flies out of the cart and into a platforming gauntlet, only to jump back into another cart. And Retro tried a new take on the minecarts too, with these rocket barrels. And I fear these. I especially fear this bat. I replayed the entire thing, collecting all the Kong letters, doing the incredibly challenging K levels, and doing the 3DS levels, which I've never actually played before, and I had a good time doing so. It's easy to view Returns as just the other game, when Tropical Freeze is as good as it is, but I'm just munching on 2 delicious cakes, although that cake sounds better. I wish they did what happened to DKC 3 on the GBA, where the entire soundtrack is just redone, but I know that was more of a technical reason for that happening. A great soundtrack can enhance a lot, and Returns has an okay soundtrack. Also, the blowing mechanic was never very good, and it's no better than it's ever been, especially in levels where you need to pull it off precisely to blow down fiery enemies. Combat in general has some oddities, like some bosses require 3 hits, like a usual video game boss, and others need like 8 or more. Bosses aren't really a highlight. Some are fine, others are just kinda tedious, but the core levels more than make up for it. It can be a really challenging game, and some levels ate up like 30 lives from me, which isn't a problem because the game throws lives and banana coins at you like they're going out of fashion. Like you get so many banana coins to buy more lives with. But the sense of reward after overcoming a really hard level and nabbing all those Kong letters is unrivaled. I don't know why they always give you Diddy Kong in the minecart levels. It can only take 1 hit. You don't need to be here, Diddy Kong! But what about the remaster itself? How is the presentation? You know what? I never really liked DK's flat model on Wii. Look how fluffy he was on GameCube and Jungle Beat. Look at that fluff. And we go to this? No way. They did a really good job here in the Switch game. Maybe not as good as Tropical Freeze, but you know what? It's still an improvement. We'll take that. Most of the texture work is good. You can sometimes see the Wii-era geometry they're attached to, but for the most part this is still a really pretty game. And there are some parts that really pushed a lot out of the poor little Wii. How did you manage this, Wii? However, I did stumble on some bad texture work. The background of this entire level is just pretty poor. You get to spots like this and you can just see a very broken tree in the background. I went to check if it was like this on Wii, and you know what, it was, but you can't really tell in the same way because of the low resolution. That's not the case in the HD version. And some effects are just outright missing or behave strangely. Like here's the Wii version, with a big, lovely sun. And here it is on Switch, where the sun gets scared and runs away. It's there for a moment, but then it goes. Still leaving the sunset colors in the sky though. It doesn't make sense. I was pretty sure these fire monsters looked worse too, and yeah, they absolutely do. The flames aren't as intense, and they don't even align with their body clearly, so you can see it's a clearly 2D image underneath the flames in a way that you can't really on Wii. Looks very cheap. This is a problem across the entire game. Most of it's fine. Most of the time you won't recognize this stuff, but when it happens, it's so clear that it's happening. And as Digital Foundry reported, the frame rate can dip, which is pretty unacceptable for a Wii port. It actually gets worse than what they shared. For the most part, it is a smooth 60 FPS, but a few moments in later levels have some judder you can absolutely feel. I never died from it, but it shouldn't be there. It's just kind of embarrassing. This has to be partially because they ported the game to Unity for some reason, which results in it having a larger file size than Tropical Freeze, the ground-up HD game with a lot more diversity, and there's now some pretty harsh load times on top of this. Here it is next to the original on Wii. It shouldn't be like this, but it mostly isn't a major issue. Like if you die, you still respawn really quickly, so it's just a tiny bit of downtime between levels. But where it's unacceptably bad is time trials. I flat out am not doing time trials. Here it is next to the original on Wii, and next to the Switch version of Tropical Freeze, the same platform, more advanced game. I don't know how they managed this. It was so quick on Wii, and very quick in Tropical Freeze too. They somehow stretched the death animation too? I thought like maybe they accidentally used the Wii's 4x3 version, but no. When playing Wii in 4x3, returns letterboxes, so everything is still technically widescreen. There is no 4x3 file for this. It's impressive a mistake like this happened. One other really weird thing is if you're playing docked with a Pro Controller, for example, and then you undock it, the controls don't transfer to the attached Joy-Con like almost every other Switch game, and yet including Tropical Freeze. So you either have to keep playing with the Pro Controller, or go into the system level settings and desync the Pro Controller. It's extremely clumsy. And okay, one more Tropical Freeze point, I won't keep comparing the games. Considering DKC Returns 3D, released before the original Wii U Tropical Freeze, no quality of life elements that game introduced were brought forward back then, and they're still not here either. They both have easy modes, but in Tropical Freeze's funky mode, you can pause the game at any point and use an item. And you can't do that in Returns. I can equip this balloon as Funky Kong and jump off the edge, and I'll just float back in totally fine. But in Returns HD, you have to go into the level with that balloon equipped, and you might waste it. That seems like such an easy thing they could have updated. And this is nitpicking, I fully see that, but Returns HD has the exact same font as the original, which is big and clunky, unlike the nicer font of Tropical Freeze. Look at these numbers. I don't mean to talk about fonts, but you gotta standardize your fonts. I was playing this game co-op with my daughter, who said she wanted to play as the girl monkey, but there is no girl monkey here. Bringing Dixie and Cranky forward would have done so much to mix things up, but Cranky in the shop doesn't even have the new fur texture that DK and Diddy have, so what can you say? And co-op is just bafflingly broken. Bouncing off enemies is a pretty key part of platforming in Donkey Kong Country, and in some stages enemies are the platform, so both players need to be able to bounce off them. That's how it was on Wii. Flat out doesn't work like that here. Once the first player squishes them, they're no longer viable at all for the second. Did they test multiplayer? How can this be? I can keep moaning, but you already knew this game did nothing new, and it was pretty flawed. But in the end, Returns HD isn't a bad way to play the game. Again, I loved revisiting Returns, and I never 100% it on 3DS, so those 8 levels in the post-game are completely new to me. And they're pretty cool. They reuse the themes from each world in the game, but they've got their own gimmicks, so they still feel pretty unique. Like, one has platforms that flip on a metronome, one has tar falling from the ceiling to avoid or else you get dragged down in goo, there's one with big gushes of water that shoot you into the sky. It's a weird mishmash of studios though, as Retro Studios made the core game. I'm pretty sure Monster Games, who did the 3DS port, made these new levels, and now Forever Entertainment remastered the new levels from the ported game to the Switch. It's always great to play new Donkey Kong levels, new to me at least, but it's incredibly odd how easy these ones are. To unlock them, you have to do everything in the game, all the Kong letters, doing the hardest levels in the game, and these feel like they could have been placed in World 2, World 3. They're fun, but they're a cakewalk. At least we got a Robo DK out of it though. Donkey Kong finally has all the Infinity Stones, and he's using them to snap the original developers from the credits. So, what's the read on this? Donkey Kong Country Returns is, and always has been, a great game, and I don't think all the problems introduced and missed opportunities to enhance it ruin the game, but it's disappointing all the same. And there are some aspects like co-op which are just broken. Nintendo are clearly cooking something with DK, given his huge role in the Mario movie and an entire theme park dedicated to him, but this return to games doesn't show that love. It's an excellent game, brought to Switch in a cheap way. This is the kind of game that gives the Switch a stigma for being weak. A Wii port should be better than it was on Wii in every imaginable way, and some of the mistakes here are just bonkers. And so, despite having a really good time with it and finally getting to play those 3DS levels, this is a 5 out of 10 port job. You've got to do better than this. That's what DK would want from you. You want to look him in the eye and tell him that you stretched the death animation? He won't like that. He loved how circular it used to be.